Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you for coming tonight to the Vista Planning Commission meeting for August 2nd, 2016. Commissioner Carroll, will you lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Turley, will you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Carroll.
Here.
Chairman Kramer.
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Garrettson.
Here.
Commissioner Jekyll. Here. Commissioner Rosler.
Here.
Commissioner Looney.
Here.
Thank you. And there are no student commissioners. They've graduated.
Oh, good for them. Thank you. Commissioners, in front of you are the minutes from our last meeting, May 31st. Are there any changes that need to be made to the minutes? If not, can we have a motion, please? Commissioner Jackal?
I move approval of the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Commissioner Garrettson, Commissioner Carroll, are there any changes?
Now, just a second.
Okay, thank you very much. Let the record show that there are no changes to the minutes, so please vote, right? Hand vote tonight, okay. All those in favor of the minutes as they were written, raise your hand. Those opposed? It passes unanimously. Ms. Chow, are there any agenda changes for this evening's meeting?
Good evening, Chairman Kramer. No changes tonight. Thank you.
All right. Okay. This evening we have just one item on our agenda, and this is an early design review. So this is an item that we will not take a vote on. We will hear from staff, and we will hear from the applicant, and they will tell us about the project, and we will only provide comments, and we're hoping that we get your comments as well. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on anything that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Chow, you want to start us off, please?
Yes, and before that, I would like to take the opportunity to do the swearing in of our new planning commissioner, Commissioner Bell. If you can please meet me at the podium down here. Please raise your right hand and read the statement.
I, Jacob Bell, do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Kramer. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Patsy Chow, Deputy Director of Community Development Department, City Planner. The item before you this evening consisted of an early design review item for a location at 206 Cedar Road. It's our planning case file number 16-0283. Before I actually start talking about the proposal, I just wanted to put in perspective some information about the early design review process for the benefit of the Commission as well as the members in the audience, and really what the purpose of the EDR is. So essentially the EDR, it provides an opportunity, as Chairman Kramer stated earlier, for the Planning Commission to be able to review this initial proposal and also to provide these preliminary feedback in an advisory form, comments to the project applicant. And it has not been fully reviewed or has not been routed to all of the city's city staff, the different departments, as it would normally be if it were a formal project review. So basically, it was purely reviewed in terms of the basic zoning application and mainly by the planner, which in this case it would be me, as I took in the project. The applicant is here tonight. They filled out a speaker slip. They will be making a formal presentation subsequent to my presentation, and they'll be able to answer any specific questions that you may have, the commission may have about the project design, how they came up with the project, the proposal, the thought process behind this initial proposal submittal for EDR review. And again, there will be no formal vote. There's no action tonight on this item. And it is not required or necessary for the early design review. So we're here mainly to collect information and see if they need to come back for another EDR or take the information that they get tonight in order to move forward with a formal submittal. So just some information.
Thank you for that.
Sure. So in terms of the project scope, this is a preliminary proposal that would develop 54 apartment units and approximately 1.95 acre site. The site is located just west of Cedar Road and north of West Vista Way. It is currently vacant, and there was a previous single-family house located on the site. There are a total of 3 buildings that are being proposed, 2 of which are 3-story buildings, and there are associated site improvements, parking, passive and active recreation areas, as well as a community building. So this is the project location, delineated in red in the center of the slide, surrounded by multifamily uses. There's a religious use facility to the south and medical offices further to the south near West Vista Way. And obviously we have Casita Elementary School further up north on Cedar. Just a couple of pictures depicting the site on the left side looking northwest at the project site, and just looking north at the street scene on Cedar Road. As you can see, multifamily projects on both sides of the street. In terms of the general plan designation, it is designated as high density, which means that it allows up to 21 dwelling units per acre maximum. And the zoning that actually goes with that particular land use designation is RM21, which is multifamily residential, 21 dwelling units per acre. So the project would require a formal submittal. It would require a site development plan permit. There would also be a landscape review associated with the site development plan, and it would also require a CEQA review. The applicant, in their proposal, they are including a request, or would be including a request for density bonus. And as you all know from the planning commissioner's standpoint, the state density bonus, the maximum that they'll be able to get for density bonus is 35%. And the 35% in this case would equate to 14 additional units. They would also be allowed to request a maximum of 3 concessions, which in this case, it is comprised of building height in terms of number of stories, the unit sizes for each of the 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms being different from what the code actually requires, and also a parking count that would be different than what the code requires. So the total 54 apartment units, essentially, they would be allowed by right or through the zoning, I should say, 40 total units. And the 35% equates to the 14, and that's where the 54 comes from. They would be dispersed throughout 2 separate buildings, 3-story maximum, where the zone actually allows a maximum of 2-story building, or 35 feet, whichever is less. That would be 19 one-bedroom units, 21 2-bedrooms, and 14 3-bedroom units. And the proposed density of 54 apartment units would equate to 27.7 dwelling units per acre, where currently it is allowed at 21. In terms of parking, the requirement per our Vista Development Code would be 139 spaces. There are currently showing on the site plan a total of 80, so that gives you a deficiency of 59 spaces right now. And that, again, is one of the concessions that would be part of the state density bonus request. This is a conceptual site plan showing the 2 3-story buildings, the community buildings surrounded by landscaping, passive, active recreation area, the covered and uncovered parking up along the northern part of the site. In terms of the architecture, it's a Craftsman style, California Craftsman architectural style. It has different elements in order to make it blend with the surrounding neighborhood, the eclectic nature of the neighborhood. It includes roofs, parapets, patios, balconies with windows and doors that are facing a common area. And there's varied building mass and color that they're trying to incorporate in this particular case. This is the community building, a 2-story building that kind of mimics the same architectural style from the other 3-story buildings. Floor plans, I realize this is hard to read. I just wanted to mainly put it on the screen. You have it in your, the planning commissioners do have in their submittal packet the full-size drawings as well as the reduced, but there's a building type 1 and 2 and the different floor plans that are available for the first, second, and the third level. And this is the floor plan for the actual community building, which shows a unit on the second floor, and the first floor has a computer room, a kitchen, the laundry room, and the restroom facilities, and the larger community room area on the right side of the screen. Oops. So the staff's request tonight is basically for the Planning Commission to provide comments and feedback to the applicant as proposed to this design of the project. And again, no formal vote or action will be taken on this item tonight. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. Commissioners, at this time, are there any questions for staff regarding the presentation? Commissioner Looney, please.
Ms. Chow, a couple questions on parking. The concessions that are being made on the number of parking spaces, is this a federal or state regulation?
It is a state mandated requirement, and perhaps what I should do that I failed to do right after I finish mine, maybe we should have the applicant make their presentation. That way it kind of rolls with all the information all at once, if that would be okay. Or would you like me to answer the question now? I can do that right now if you like. So it is a state, it's part of the state density bonus law, and the concessions are open-ended to the extent that what is required in order to make the project financially feasible. So the applicant is able to make a request for a concession and a modification of a current standard that is in the code, in the city's code, in order to make the project work, basically. And in their case, parking is one of them.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'd like to call Mary Jean. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask Commissioners Carroll and Jackal, is it okay if we let the applicant give the presentation and see if the questions get answered?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See if I can work this. Yeah, it's just go forward. Widen it. There we go. Technology. Good evening.
Good evening. State your name and give your address, please.
Yes, Mary Jane Jagodzinski. I'm with Community Housing Works, a nonprofit. And our address is 2815 Camino del Rio South, Suite 350 in San Diego. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the thoughtful nature that the city approaches development, and so we appreciate the time you're putting in giving us some early feedback on this. Let me see if I've got this. There we go. Just a slide or two very quickly for anyone who doesn't know Community Housing Works. We are a 30-plus-year-old San Diego-based nonprofit. We both own and develop and own for the very long term multifamily for working families and individuals. And all of our developments for affordable, of course, have deed restrictions for 55 years. and so we're not the person who develops it and flips it. We're going to be here for the very long run with our developments. We have currently owned 4 successful and well-functioning developments here in the city of Vista, so we very much feel part of the city. And my development team is here tonight, and they will make comments. My general contractor is office across the street, John L. Sweet of Sun Country Builders. And my architects, Rodriguez Associates, Carlos Rodriguez is here, and my civil engineer is Excel Engineering, and Andy Van Looy will come up briefly. And they're from Escondido, and my architect, San Diego. Oh, I went too far. Just one slide. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. This is the same team that designed and built North Santa Fe Apartments that opened last year directly across from the Sprinter station. A lot of these slides, actually, it looks like you've seen. So, again, the red arrow is the vacant land that we're talking about, and so you've already seen that for location. Oops, I keep doing this. You've seen some of the adjacent, both to the north and to the south of us, are 2 existing multifamily developments. To the west, across sort of a wetlands area, are single-family homes that are all in the city of Oceanside. And directly across the street are 2 existing developments that we own and operate, which are Cedar Apartments and Nettleton Apartments. So we're very familiar with the neighborhood, and I think those have a very good track record. You've seen some of the street scene, looking north, the school, etc. So as your staff indicated, almost a 2-acre parcel. We purchased it a little over a year ago. Because it was a very good opportunity and already zoned for multifamily. Yes, as staff indicated, the state density bonus of 35% for affordable apartments, which would yield 54 apartments. I'm going to ask my engineer to come up, and if Andy can just briefly talk about any of the engineering things, and then we'll get into the architecture.
Good evening. My name is Andy Van Looy, Civil Engineering Project Manager with Excel Engineering in Escondido. Really quick, since Mary Jane just touched on a couple of photographs that dealt with the front of the site, one of the main features of the site development of this project will be frontage improvements that converts what is currently a substandard street design at the frontage of the project. To the north and to the south, there are sidewalks and parkways fronting those projects. We will be doing the same and matching the curb and gutter and sidewalk system to both the north and the south to match that exactly. Part of that frontage improvement will also be overhead power and telephone and communications and taking underground. So an overhead conversion to an underground system right there. Along the west side of the site, there is also a retaining wall at that portion. We have grading in that back area that throughout the entire site, all grading will be per code and per regulations of the City of Vista. At the back of the site, we'll be locating our water quality features, our biofiltration systems. I'm going to flip that right there. Oh, there you go. Shows the color. And that will be located just at a 50-foot setback from what is shown on the site plan as a freshwater marsh that is down at the very bottom of the hill. Though that line work on the site plan actually was located by surveyors with the environmental consultant out there at the same time, so that is accurate line work at that point. The rest of the site will just be standard, typical improvements, drainage to the back, and at that, I'll just turn over to Mary Jane. Thank you.
And I'm going to call up my engineer, Carlos Rodriguez, my architect, Carlos Rodriguez, principal with Rodriguez Associates. And you may want to talk a little bit about this, and then I'll just add a couple of things when you get to some of the concession requests.
Thank you very much, Mary Jane. Carlos Rodriguez, I'm an architect with Rodriguez Associates, 4080 Center Street in San Diego. And thank you for the opportunity to present this project to you. We spent a lot of time developing the site plan to try to minimize the impact on the neighborhood. When you look at the site plan, we've broken up the apartments into multiple buildings so that we don't get large architectural buildings and try to minimize the architectural massing of the building. There's some other things that we do as well, and I'll show you that as we get into the elevations. The community building, which is the small footprint that you see up front, is located along Cedar. It's a very prominent location. It controls the comings and goings from the site. Property management will be located there. It's also a smaller scale building to be compatible with the immediate buildings around the neighborhood. We separated the vehicular traffic from the pedestrian traffic, and we try to minimize the impact of the cars on the site. So one of the things that you'll see on the north side there is you'll see the parking lot there, which acts as a very good buffer between our buildings and the adjacent property, and that'll be fully landscaped. The other half of the driveway are cars that are tucked under the building, so you don't see those cars. So you have very minimal impact of the on-site cars to people visiting the site. On the southern part of the site are the courtyards. We have multiple courtyards, a hierarchy of courtyards, smaller courtyards and two larger ones. Again, this is a very pedestrian-oriented development in that we're encouraging people to come out into the outdoor spaces and use these, the center plaza and the courtyard next to the community center, and also on the western side, another courtyard. In addition to that, we have private patios that are attached to each of the individual units. So again, we're asking people to come out of their units, use the patios, use the outdoor spaces, have a lot of eyes and ears on the site. I find that adds to the security of the site and makes the neighborhood safer. It also makes this particular development safer as well. So we have units that look on all four sides of the building. Let's see. There you go. Here's our typical unit plans. And the main concept we have here is the great room concept. When you look at the living room, kitchen, dining room space, it's sort of a country kitchen, a very wide open plan, which allows the residents to, first of all, it feels spacious when you first walk in the door, but also allows the residents to furnish it in any number of different ways. And as you walk in the door, one of the things that's really important to me is that you're able to look outside through the living room and out into the balcony. So you're not walking into a dead-end wall, that you have these vistas that look out into the courtyard or Cedar Street or some of the other surrounding outdoor areas. We have walk-in closets, and you're looking at 3 different floor plans here. The 1-bedroom, which is 600 square feet, the 2-bedroom, which we have to get up to 750 square feet. So we're going to add a few more square feet to that, and 1,000 square feet for the 3-bedroom unit. Now, this has already been discussed by staff. It shows, we blew up the parking data for you to take a closer look at, and we highlight the regular City of Vista requirements, and then the affordable standard parking requirements that we're using from the City of San Diego, which is 70.3 parking spaces for this particular unit. And we're proposing more than that, 80 parking spaces, which comes out to about 1.5 parking spaces per unit. The building height concession is one of the things that's featured in the staff's presentation. So it's a 3-story structure at 35 and a half feet. The height limit is 35. I think with a little bit of work, we can get the entire building below that. This is just actually a small portion of the building. So I'd like to show you the rest of the building, which is, you can take a look at the entire building. One of the apartment buildings is the top image that you see there. The majority of the building is less than 35 feet. We do have a flat roof parapet in the middle, and we need that because we're proposing solar panels, roof-mounted solar panels, and all of our projects that we've done with Community Housing Works has a high bar with regard to sustainability, whether it's air quality or photovoltaic or thermal solar panels, high efficiency equipment, low water use plumbing fixtures, and so those are the types of things that we think of ahead of time. So that parapet area is going to go to good use, and it's going to make the building more sustainable. But at the same time, we're aware of the neighborhood appearance, and so we did incorporate hip roofs, which are very common in the neighborhood, and we incorporated them on each end of the building. I talked earlier about the architectural massing, and we're using color and bay windows, so you can see that the facade moves back and forth so that we break up the architectural mass. And then we use color to help define the individual pieces of the architecture. Now, I will say that this graphic shows the colors, and it's hard to control because it depends on the monitor and the computers you use. They are slightly more fluorescent than what they actually will be, or what I have in my mind's eye. The colors I'm thinking have very earthy tones to them. And then here's the community building. Again, very compatible with the neighborhood. 2 stories. We have manager's unit on the 2nd floor. Again, trying to add security and control of the entrance to the project. And then the community building is the lower portion that you see there with the trellis awning over the entrance and the windows. And as staff pointed out, we have a large community room. We have a computer center as well. And the leasing offices will be located there. So I think this is really going to be a nice heart of this community where people would come out. In addition to the outdoor spaces, we'll use the common areas here in this community building. And that's the end of my portion. I'll turn it over to Mary Jane.
Thank you. Just a note or two in conclusion. I know and I appreciate that the city has concerns and interest in parking for multifamily. I hear that. I've been in a number of city council meetings. First, the parking that we're providing at 80 spaces is actually higher than the City of San Diego requirement. So why are we talking about City of San Diego? City of San Diego spent something like $250,000 doing a very large several-year study with Wilbur Smith looking at affordable housing. It's like about a 300-page. I brought the cover. This was a couple of years ago. And they found what we who own and operate our affordable housing, that people with lesser means don't have the same number of cars. They just don't. And they don't need parking as much as market rate. Market rate apartments frequently will have a number of adults to, and in a tight economy like this, sometimes families double up in market rate, and you do see parking spilling out. And I know that is a concern, and that would be a concern for me if I were in the neighborhood. The difference with affordable is that, as you know, it is tightly regulated. There are criminal checks and credit checks and background checks and income checks. And this is not like you write down your income. This is you get pay stubs and income tax returns, and that's done every year on income certification. We can also highly regulate how many cars you have. There are typically thousands of people in line for every apartment that we build. And so therefore, I don't have to go to the market and say, oh, you can have 3 cars. No, we can limit the number of cars. Maybe more importantly to you is direct information from the city. This is 1.5 parking spaces per apartment. And that is the same ratio that we have at our North Santa Fe apartment. And I know that the city staff has actually looked at North Santa Fe and the other new development on South Santa Fe and looked at how the parking was. And we have wide open parking spaces every day and every night. And that's at the same ratio. So we feel very comfortable in providing this. So thank you, and we're here for questions.
Commissioners, now is the time to ask questions regarding the presentation. You will have an opportunity after we hear the public's comments, where we will then give our commissioner comments regarding the project. So questions again about the presentation from either staff or from CHW. Commissioner Carroll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Ms. Chow, it didn't actually specify in our package that this is an affordable housing project, but obviously all of these units are affordable housing units, and so it qualifies for that state bonus. But on those 3 concessions, what sets the level of the acceptable concession? So a 3-story is one of the concessions. Well, why not a 4-story or a certain X number of parking instead of the required number of parking? What sets that level?
There are basically what I would call findings as far as related to the density bonus law, insofar as why the concessions are required or necessary. So, for instance, we must be able to prove the fact that without the concessions, whether it's a 3-story or 4-story building or whatever it's modified, I guess, from the development standards, that they're actually necessary in order to make the project financially feasible to build, to construct. That's one of them. The other thing is that it cannot have an adverse impact on public health and welfare. And the third thing, it cannot be contrary to what the state or federal law would allow. So with those 3 things in mind, that's when we have to look at what the concessions that are being requested and whether the extent of it is going to be not in sync with these particular items as the state puts it.
Okay, thanks. And I see there's also a request to have a lesser distance between some of the buildings. Is that not being considered a concession?
Since we've been having conversation on this to get in preparation for the early design review, the applicants have been able to go back and revisit that because it was only one particular point or one area that was not meeting that. So they have been able to adjust that to not have to ask for that concession.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Rossler, please.
Ms. Chow, back to the parking issue and the other projects that Community Works has done in the city. Are you satisfied with the parking? You've looked at the projects since they've been built. Has it operated as planned?
To our knowledge, both the Community Housing Works, the North Santa Fe Apartments project, and the Paseo Point, we have not encountered concerns that I would say that related to parking as how they were approved, or the deficiencies in terms of the modification of the requirements. Not to my knowledge, so no concerns that I can share with you, I guess, at this point.
Since the Paseo Santa Fe improvements have been done, are there any additional parking issues in the neighborhood? It seemed to me at one point there was a concern that people were parking up like Ocean View that were living in the apartments. Is that occurring since the improvements have been completed?
Not to my knowledge, and I'm fully aware of the fact that there were concerns in people parking in other parts of the neighborhood and the church, etc., but not since all the improvements went in.
Okay, very good. And then on the building height, the height in the zone is how many feet and how many stories?
2 stories or 35 feet, whichever is less.
Okay. So going to 3 stories is the concession. So it doesn't matter if they give us the half foot or not.
Yeah.
Okay. That was all for staff. I'll come back after the other commissioners.
Okay. Commissioner Jackal, please.
Thank you. I guess we're all kind of worrying our way around the concessions. Do we have any terms or any say in terms of this concessions requested? Do we automatically have to approve them, or can we modify them, or?
Certainly, as the Planning Commission, it is a discretionary review. However, keeping in mind the 3 items that I listed based on Commissioner Carroll's question about as to what level do you allow certain things, I think we have to adhere to what the state is saying in that regard. But again, it is a discretionary action, and insofar as it does not create an issue with those particular items, I don't know that there is it's up to the commission at that point to make those comments if you feel necessary that it is.
So if we felt that one or more of the concessions would have an adverse effect on public health and welfare, then we could say that?
We would have to justify how that is the case. I don't think we could simply just state it without any, recognition of what the actual reasoning is.
Right.
And I'm sure Mr. Stone would have concerns if we just made a statement that he does
sure.
without having the reasoning back up.
There's actually a definition of specific adverse impact. So a concession can be denied, if I recall, if it produces a specific adverse impact. But the specific adverse impact has to be in relationship to a written objective standard related to health, safety, or welfare. And so, depending upon what the particular facts might be and the concerns, that could be evaluated. But it is a rather exacting standard, and it does not vest the commission with the same level of discretion that it would have in other settings.
Thank you.
Commissioner Looney, please.
Patsy, as a community housing project, does the applicant, is he encouraged to adhere to the design guidelines that have become policy to the city?
Yes.
So they aren't exempt from any of those design guidelines?
No, it would be reviewed like any other project.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Garrettson.
I have two issues. One, I keep hearing financial feasibility. Is that something they have to show? Or can they just say it's not financially feasible unless we go to 6 stories?
We require as part of our application that there be a demonstration of feasibility. So, for instance, in the event that some concession were really not required in order to make the project feasible, given the affordability standards, it would not need to be approved. In this instance, obviously, they're trying to get the higher density, and so, for instance, the 3 stories would be important, I would imagine, to what they're trying to achieve.
So they actually have to submit a document justifying that it wouldn't be financially feasible unless they did ABC.
That's my reading of having drafted the ordinance. Yes, we need to have the means to assess if it's financially feasible.
At what point in time would they do that?
It would need to be done prior to the presentation of the item to the Planning Commission, but it would obviously be much better in everybody's interest to have it taken care of early on. I imagine there's been some pro forma work done already on this.
Okay. Second question relates to amenities. I see a community building, but I heard a room with a computer. I don't see a lot for recreation. With that many units, there's going to be a lot of kids. You know, because there's a school close by, but that has a fence all around it. There's no public access to the basketball courts or whatever. So where are the children who live in these apartments going to recreate?
And I could let Mary Jane expand on that, but there are areas that are provided for active and passive recreation area around the community building area, or immediately next to it to the west. And between the buildings, I would say that there's that open area that you find right here. I can't make the pointer work, I guess. Oh, right here. In this area right here, and then next to the community building. So there are definitely areas that are being provided outdoors.
So there are areas there where they could throw a frisbee, throw a football.
I don't know if it's big enough for throwing.
Well, that's not
football,
active
but
then. It's passive recreation. It's a passive area, which means the kids have no place to play, is what it says to me, especially with a school with a fence all around it.
Yeah, and I can.
And
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's a concern, you know, because you have all the other apartments there. So, you know, they're going to, I don't know what the kids are going to do.
Yeah, and if Mary Jane or somebody in her team would like to respond to that, certainly that's part of the discussion tonight.
I think what I'd like to clarify is these areas that were pointed out. That plaza area in the center between the two buildings there is about 46 feet wide, and it's longer than that in the opposite direction. So you can definitely throw a football around or play kickball in those areas. There is a tot lot immediately adjacent to the community center. She's got the pointer on it right there. So there is a playground for smaller children there. The laundry, a common laundry room, is in the community building right adjacent to that, so that if the parents go to wash clothes, they can bring their children and supervise their children at the tot lot. And then in addition to that, if you go to the western side, you have another courtyard that's probably about 40 by 60 feet as well. So we have pretty large outdoor spaces, and there's 3 of them, so I think there's ample room, and they can be active areas depending on how it's programmed. The space is there for that.
But no basketball court, tennis court, just an open area that has grass that they can go play a pickup game or...
Right. This is very early in the planning stages, so we haven't programmed all the spaces, but we have put in similar housing projects, half-court basketball courts, for example, and I think there's room here for that. You know, a lot of decisions go into what exactly is the recreation you'd like to provide, and we're still in the process of trying to develop that.
Well, I just want to communicate that will be a major concern going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Don't leave. Mr. Rodriguez, Mary Jane, I have questions. My questions are also in the line of Commissioner Gerritsen's question regarding the area between the two buildings as a play area. Thought would be if there's area to throw a ball, do something like that, probably not a good idea to have first floor windows. So I'll put that out there. Question is, since you have a 3-story building, is it elevator, or do people have to move their furniture and refrigerators up and down the stairs?
We do not provide an elevator, but
Okay.
they do not move their furniture, their refrigerators, because all of the appliances are already in the kitchen.
Okay.
We have, as in all of our developments, there is a resident laundromat, so they're not moving washers and dryers up either.
Okay. On this photo here, the community center that's in the, we're looking at, it would be the lower right corner.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of that facility, I think I heard, was kind of like ground control.
It is. So it was very specifically placed on in that area, both to tier sort of the stories as you're driving down the street. Also, that it is truly the entry point, if you will, and there's eyes on the street. So this is where the resident and all of our, all in affordable housing, the manager lives in the community, lives right on site. So, but that is their office. So that's the leasing office. There is a computer room. It's not one computer. It's, I don't remember if we've said 5 stations or what, but there is a computer room. There is what we call a community room, community for this community. And part of this is that, also Community Housing Works really provides service-enriched housing. It's very important for affordable housing that there be really good resident services, which we do, which provide things like financial fitness, after school, tutoring, things that really result in the children and families in our developments truly moving up in the world, and the children actually improving school performance for the schools. A UCSD professor did a study on the city of Poway, where there's something like 6 or 7 or 8 affordable housing developments all in one area, and we have a number of those. And the question is, what did it do to property? What did it do to school performance, et cetera? And property values had no effect, slightly went up. School performance went up, and so there was really no negative effect. We also look very carefully at recreational area, if I may just, and this is not atypical. We've never provided a tennis court. That would be nice, but we've never provided a tennis court in any of our developments. We, often will provide other things that are like parkours and walking. We do a very green curriculum to have, and I know kids want to run around a bit, and so we think there is really a lot of running around room here, and there's a community patio, et cetera. So.
Not done yet.
Oh, okay.
So the entrance into the facility, if I'm a resident, is via the driveway. So I come in the driveway. So is it a gated drive?
No, it is not a gated. We actually think that often gates kind of send a bad signal both to the neighbors and not, and that's what we have good watch to ensure that we're not.
So if I don't live there, but I'm coming to visit someone who does live there, I still enter through the driveway and meander through?
Well, there would be visitor parking, I guess, is the question. Yes, there would.
No, it's more like how do I get to the apartments? And I'm wondering if the community center as a control point is really in the right location, if they're trying to control or keep an eye on who's coming or going, and maybe the building should be offset and the community center should be put closer to that driveway just so it does have the appearance of the watchful eye.
That's a very thoughtful comment. We do security cameras. We do neighborhood watch programs. Okay. And I know Carlos really develops his designs with kind of bringing the neighbors out to how do you describe that? It's like it's eyes
just
on
inviting them out. Yeah, we do invite the tenants to come out and be part of the outdoor spaces. But to answer your question directly, if you look at the site plan, you'll notice that the community center is further closer to the street than the apartment. I intentionally moved the apartment back. The manager, the leasing office, is in the upper right-hand corner of that building, so they have a direct view to the entrance of the parking lot, and there'll be a walkway directly from those first parking spaces to the community center. So that's how we accomplish that.
Okay. And another thought for your amenities is maybe a community grow garden where they can plant tomatoes, peppers.
Absolutely. We're very committed to that, and when we've done renovations even of projects, we've pulled out landscape that was guzzling a lot of water and really of no play area and no help, and definitely it's one of our core values, food and providing the ability. And we find that kids get really active. It helps intergenerational. There's a lot of one bedrooms here, so ultimately it's not restricted by age, but we find that the one bedrooms ultimately often end up with a lot of seniors. And so that there's a real intergenerational. Kids get active in the gardens, they eat better, the community, room where they can do cooking, and it opens up other avenues of healthy living.
So how are the one bedroom, two bedroom, and three bedrooms? Are the three bedrooms on the top floors? One bedrooms on the lower floors?
No, they're evenly distributed throughout the project. So actually they stack up. So if you have a one bedroom downstairs, you'll have a one bedroom above that and above that.
Got it. Okay. Don't go away. I think there's other questions for you. Commissioner Looney, please.
Thank you. Patsy, a couple of questions. Does staff determine do they evaluate the financial feasibility study, or is that done by an outside source? I mean, are they going to spend $100 a square foot to build the units, or are they going to spend $200 a square foot per unit? Who determines what's appropriate?
Obviously, staff would take it in, and we would look at it, review it, and if we needed to have the opinion of a professional or an expert in financial feasibility analysis, obviously we would try to secure that and make sure that everything, the I's are dotted, etc. So, but it would be the staff's responsibility to basically look at it and then again seek the help if we needed to.
Okay, another question. With the affordable housing, is the applicant exempt from having laundry facilities in each of the living units?
They're not exempt. As far as having individual, the washers and dryers, it's not something that, I know that you're referring probably to the design guidelines that it's called out for the units to have them. But again, I think it's dependent or reliant in this case on what the applicant is trying to achieve for the project, and if we're able to accommodate that. So.
Okay, one more question. Again, because of the affordable housing application, are they then exempt from what I thought was a design guideline and somewhat of a requirement to be able to enter that unit directly from the parking space? Because right now, all the guests and all the residents are having to enter through a common corridor to enter the living unit, because I don't see on the plan really any outside entrances to the units. They have to go through the corridor.
And from the design guidelines, the last we revised it, we did have that as placed in the design guidelines to have that as one of the options on how to access from the garage to the units through a common corridor or hallway, as I recall. As far as the guests having to go through the hallway and not being able to access it from the outside, I don't think that was something that we went as far as that, identifying that, and certainly it's dependent on what they're proposing here and verifying whether it works or it doesn't work.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Rossler?
Hi, a couple of questions about unit size, your architecture, and then one and security. You mentioned your architect mentioned during your presentation that you were going to raise the square footage of the two-bedroom unit to 750. Can you tell me why you have to do that?
What we call TCAC, California Tax Credit Allocation Commission, which allocates the federal low-income housing tax credits, which we get equity, a great deal of equity. For example, in North Santa Fe, $19 million of that project came from private investment in the local low-income housing tax credits. They have very specific guidelines that one bedrooms are 500 square feet, two bedrooms 750, and three bedrooms 1,000. Can be larger, but also people go in and ask for exemptions. We don't ask for exemptions. We think it's in our experience, especially with this architect, they build in a lot of storage, including storage even on the outside on the balcony, so you don't have a lot of stuff on the balcony. You got places for families and individuals to comfortably live. So the 742 is really kind of rounded to 750. That's what he meant.
I am torn, obviously, about your solar panels, which I think are a great idea, but your parapet wall, I believe, needs some work. So we'll get into our comments later, but I'm concerned about that. And then the other thing I'm concerned about is security in your residential laundry room. You said you had cameras around. I would be interested in knowing about that. When you come back, all the stuff that you have told us about your management plan, I'm going to be very interested to see that and make that part of your project approval, as we did on your last two projects. And then I'd like you to provide information about a transit stop on West Vista Way. I think I know where one is, but I'd like you to indicate where that is and what the distance to your project is. Okay? Thank you.
Commissioner Carroll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. You'd mentioned this 55-year deed restriction. That's a self-imposed restriction?
No. In order to receive the tax credit allocation, you sign a regulatory agreement for 55 years.
That keeps it as an affordable housing project?
Keeps it affordable housing, and yes.
And then what happens after that expires?
Well, we haven't, the program hasn't been around for that long to know.
Okay.
Very often it's resyndicated at some point mid-time to do refinance, because typically these kind of mortgages don't run that long, and often renovation, and so then that gets further extended.
Well, I know it sounds like a really long time away from now, 55 years, but there's lots of houses in Vista that are older than that, and my concern is that at some point in time, that tight control that you're going to have on the parking won't be there anymore, and then it's basically it's going to spill out to the neighborhood, and I'd like to plan for those future. I don't know if there's a way to have that kind of restriction in perpetuity on these types of projects, so that 50 years from now, our planning commissioners aren't sitting here and our neighbors aren't sitting here cursing at us why we let this happen to the neighborhoods. I don't know the answer to that, but it seems like a long way away, but it still concerns me.
Commissioner Jackal, please.
Thank you. I, too, am desperately concerned about the parking. I believe I saw 2 ADA parking spaces for tenants. Now, what about ADA for people who come visit?
Carlos, that's
Yeah, we will provide the ADA requirements that are required by the state of California. Right now, we do have the 2 parking spaces that you see on the site. In addition to that, we have additional ADA parking that's in the tuck-under parking area. So the tenants would be parking there, and we have a drop-off area that leads them directly into the corridor.
I think those were the 2 that I thought I saw. How many visitors' parking spaces are there?
Well, we just provided the parking per the ratios that we've identified on the site data. So there you go.
actually it's here if you can read it.
Yeah. So it shows 8 spaces, visitor parking spaces. This is the San Diego requirements for affordable housing, and then 2.7 for staff. But again, we exceed that, so we're actually providing more than that in each of those categories.
May I just add something? When we say San Diego, San Diego is both the core San Diego and includes the northern part of San Diego, which is really suburban, much like I live in North County, and it's much like any other part of North County, and they have different density. So there is a very different parking requirement if this were in San Diego, downtown San Diego, as opposed to North City West, as they call it. So I just want to clarify that when we say City of San Diego. They have different standards based on kind of what's around you.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Rossler, please.
Ms. Chow, it seems to me that there are affordable housing projects up on the northern part of the city off of Oak and Palomar. And those projects, I think at one time were approved when the city incorporated and are coming to the end of their 55-year period. From your perspective, staff perspective, have you seen any additional problems with them going from affordable to market rate?
I'm not particularly aware of the particulars of those situations on those 2 cases that you mentioned, but certainly we can look into it and see if there are anything that has popped up since the time.
And then for Mr. Stone, it seems to me that we have in the past recorded approvals against the property as deed restrictions. Can we do that in this particular case so that the conditions run with the land no matter who owns it?
I would imagine there's ways for us to do that. We, often, have, for instance, with the density bonus, that by itself, I think, would require that we enter into an agreement restricting affordability. And in association with that, we could, I imagine, impose other covenants on the land that would be similar to the conditions that would be adopted.
Okay. I'd be interested in the discussion on that when the project comes back. Thank you.
Commissioner Bell, please.
Just a quick question for the CHW. I'm new here, so this is a genuine question, but is the 54 units necessary? It seems like you're asking for the maximum you can possibly get or build. And I mean that genuinely. Is this a financial consideration? And can you give examples, maybe not tonight, but in the future from your other projects of how this plays out to keep the buildings nice, make sure things stay the status quo you guys intend the buildings to have over the long term because of the number of units, because we've heard some negatives, and obviously that's our job is to pick through it. But anything you can provide that would justify why we have 3-story buildings and some limited parking or less parking than some people would prefer would be helpful, either now or at a future time, I think.
Yes, I'm happy to. And we did have a density bonus on North Santa Fe as well, just as other, so.
Commissioner Looney, please.
Patsy, with the increase of residents immediately adjacent to the school, what are the current classroom counts in that school? And then how might the counts change with this development? And is there another location in the city where we've had a similar project where we've increased the living units that are close proximity to an existing campus? And what's the dynamics there with the school system relative to the increase of population in students?
The Vista Unified School District is a discipline that will be reviewing the project when it's formally submitted. So they will have the opportunity to make comments whether that creates an impact in terms of their facility and what's currently provided, or if the payment of additional fees that goes into future facilities planning or financing of those in the neighborhood or somewhere else to accommodate the increase in the capacity. But certainly VUSD is one of the parties, and to my knowledge at this point, because we have not routed to anyone but planning at this point as part of the EDR, I don't have an answer on that. But we'll be having that conversation later on.
Okay, that's all the comments right now, or questions, I should say, from the commissioners. So we'll start with questions or comments. Comments, I guess, would be appropriate from the audience, from the public. So the first one to come up, please, would be Letitia. And if you could state your full name, give your address, and your comments, please.
Hi, my name's Leticia, and I live right across the street from there. I live at 205 Cedar Drive.
Your last name, please?
Oh, De Leon.
Thank you.
So I just wanted, I got the letter in the mail, so I wanted to come and just voice concern. 54 units with my neighbors talking, that's a lot of units. There's no parking. A lot of the curbs are red. Some people park in the red. So my just concern is mainly the parking, and then there's 5 of the apartments that are there are gated for a reason because the area is really bad. Just driving over here, I saw some people dealing drugs, so I'm just like, okay, I'm going to a thing. They're about to build more apartments, and it's just going to be more security issues going to be coming up, especially when they don't have access coming in. Parking spot, they're going to be parking down the street, or even our parking. I only have 1 spot, and then there's 2 for visitors where I live, and it's a 7-unit complex, and it's very tight. And most of the people that live next door to the other community housing works apartments, they've got a lot of cars. They're parking at the school, they're parking down the street, or down on the other street on West Drive. So just my concern is the parking and the security that's going to happen with 54 units.
Thank you so much. Tom Fleming, please. Yes. They're outside the door. There's a table out there, and you'll see the little white slip, and you can fill it up and bring it up to Ms. Turley.
Good evening, Commissioners and Commissioner Chair, Chairman Kramer. There's a couple of things I wanted to bring up that I thought was important that was mentioned. One of the comments that was made, and I believe it's a quote, I might not be right, but low-income housing residents have fewer cars. That might be true of the North Santa Fe unit that the builders are talking about, because it's directly across from the transit center. This place does not have a transit center right next to it, even close to it. It's all the way down on Vista Way would be the closest bus stop, and it would be a bus stop. I have been by there in the early evenings and early mornings, and the school's parking lot, even in the summer, is full. So that's not teachers there preparing for their classes. That's people, residents parking there. The architecture, as we was going through it a while ago, I was a little concerned about the design of it. The more I looked at it, the design's not that bad. Maybe the coloring, and he had mentioned that he was going to be more earth tone, so I think that would be very good there. I'm concerned that there was mention that they own another unit, if I'm not mistaken, right across or in that neighborhood, and if there's parking already in the street, and that's a unit that's being managed, there's a concern in the management process. So these are little things that I picked up. I just thought you might be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, please, Sherry Trezio.
Good evening. My name is Cherie Treviso. I live at 31 Hatfield Circle in Oceanside. I'm here as a parent of 2 students at Casita Center and on behalf of our PTA that is also here tonight. I've come to express my concerns about the already expressed traffic conditions and raise awareness for student safety in the areas surrounding our school. I asked the Planning Commission to carefully consider the detrimental effects that adding another multi-unit complex would add on this already burdened community. Like many families at Casita, we do not live in the neighborhood immediately surrounding the school, but drive our students in daily to attend this magnet center. We cannot ride our bikes or even walk to the school. Due to this, every morning from approximately 7:30 to 8:30, traffic can be seen backed up on West Street all the way out to Emerald and over Vista Way, and in both directions on Cedar, as students and local residents try to make their way in and out of the neighborhood. The scene is again repeated during the afternoon pickup times. Many parents opt to park in the surrounding side streets up to 2 and 3 blocks away, as I have often done with my students, and walk in with their students and younger siblings. Both of my sons here with me tonight have served on Student Safety Patrol, acting as crossing guards at the corner of West and Cedar. They frequently come home with stories of frustrated drivers, honking, yelling, swearing, and even making dangerous maneuvers into oncoming traffic or driving recklessly directly in front of the school to escape the traffic conditions. My oldest son has even shared a story of a fire truck that could not maneuver through the crowded 2-lane streets but had to patiently wait for traffic to clear because drivers could not pull over due to parking issues on the street. This is definitely a safety concern. Obviously, all of these situations pose a threat and safety concern not only to our students, our families, our staff, and the surrounding residents and facilities like Vista Knoll Specialized Care that is immediately next to the school. Concerns are not only during school hours, but often during afternoon or evening activities like back to school night or open house. The school has had to make parking available on the blacktop. This is not a safe situation for our students, and it is due to the lack of available space on the street. But even that is not a complete solution. My mother, who could not be here tonight, has oftentimes had to unfortunately decline attending events because she could not find parking near the school or even in the parking lot to accommodate her handicap. A quick review of the school's Facebook page for the 2015-2016 year revealed approximately 1 to 2 complaints or concerns expressed by parents per month related to traffic or parking. And in regards to the open or play spaces, specifically the marsh that is in the back of the school, the students have worked very hard to develop a backyard habitat where they study nature and are restoring the habitat that is native to that area. If there is not enough play area in the complex, that will spill over into that marsh and affect the work that the students have worked so hard on and take a lot of pride in. Again, I ask the Commission to carefully consider the existing conditions of this burdened neighborhood, the detrimental effects of adding another complex, and without providing adequate parking or even a traffic study. Thank you for your time and your consideration for our students and our safety.
Thank you. Next up, Terry Collins, please. And following Terry will be Lupe.
Hi, my name is Terry Collins. I have a Facebook page called Vista Community Advocate, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of the people who have messaged me their concerns. I live at 1504 Green Oak Road. I'm not in the community, but I do care about Vista as a whole and the quality of life for all of us. I just am curious as to how many of you have driven by this site and visited it. A couple? Okay, many of you. Good. Good. I went there on Saturday, and I took a video, which I posted, to show the surrounding area, which is surrounded by many apartment complexes, and the Casita School. I posted that video, and immediately parents reached out to me. And they were concerned because of the lack of parking, which you've heard about already. The next day, I received another video. One of the parents had told me she would take one for me when school started, but I did get another video, and it also showed 40 cars, I counted, parked in Casita parking lot with diapers and aluminum cans thrown about. So I just want to say that adds extra burden to our school district. They have to have their facility staff clean that up. So that's something to consider. I think it is a safety issue, a health and safety issue, because this is only a 2-lane street. And when I look at the plans up there, there's only one driveway in. So you're going to have a lineup of cars there in the morning trying to get in and out of the parking lot, because as people come and go, and there's people lined up to get to school, that's going to be a safety issue, especially with the kids who do walk down that street to get to the school. That's another concern. I've noticed in the new 3-story apartments that are now being built, they're really ominous and out on the street, and it's so much different than a 2-level apartment complex. And the thing about it is we see pictures of pretty mature trees, but when you go by these new complexes, they're not mature trees. And so it's out of proportion. And again, this is a quality life issue for the people who have to live here. They should have nice green space with trees that are in proportion to this huge 3-story building. The other concern is that this is a 2-way street, and at the corner is West Vista Way, and that's a busy street. And so has a traffic study been done? Do we need a light there? If we have a light there, will that cause more trouble, more traffic? I did a little math based on the numbers, and there were, I think, the 3-bedroom apartments. Nowadays, it's not just one family living in an apartment. Often it's 2, and there might be 2 people in each of those bedrooms. So a 3-bedroom apartment alone would be 84 spaces. So we're already short spaces. We already have people parking in the school. The streets are surrounded. And lastly, it is a safety issue, because if you drive by there at different times of day, you'll notice that people are parked way down the streets. And at night, that's not safe for people to have to walk that far, especially if there are drug deals going on. So these are all things that need to be taken into consideration. We need to not make just boxes to put people in or square units to put people in, but we should be designing something beautiful that adds to our city and gives everybody a really nice quality of life, including the playgrounds and everything that were spoken of. Those should all be considered. And I'm just wondering, because we're having such long discussions with you all asking kind of the same questions, maybe these are things the city needs to take into consideration, and we need to change the design guidelines so we can ensure that the things that you are concerned about are not things that you have to be concerned about for every single 3-story building or every single building coming up, apartment complex coming up, that they're fixed in the general plan and designs and can be fixed that way. And also last week, this is my last statement, last week the Voice of San Diego put out an article regarding high-density developments and what the governor is doing. And in the article, it said that the city of San Diego is proposing to put on the ballot, a measure to put on the ballot that the citizens can start voting on whether these high-density apartments can go in. It happened in Encinitas, too. They passed one, so you might want to read that article in the Voice of San Diego. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collins. Lupe? Oh, there you are. Just wanted to let you know that there is a timer, so you will be limited to the 3 minutes.
Me only?
No.
Okay, so my name is Lupe Villagrana, and I manage a community in Cedar Road, 210 Cedar Road, 49 apartments. I'm here to give you the perspective of somebody that has been managing a property for many years. And literally, when I see all these presentations, what it looks to me is like a fantasy, because the reality of dealing with day-to-day operations or managing a community, the numbers are totally different. And number one, the parking. You give us 1 parking per apartment, when in reality we need at least 3 per unit, regardless of the size of the unit. And this is something that we see on a daily basis. The other thing is the human density. You say 54 apartments, when in reality, I did the math based on occupancy standards that are given by, I don't know who gives us those, but on 54 apartments, based on the units proposed, that will be a human density of 260 people. Does the neighborhood have the capacity to accommodate 260 other people there? I don't know. Does the school have the capacity to accommodate all of these extra students? I do not know. I think that's something that you guys need to look into. My main concern, as somebody that already lives there and sees day to day what's going on, human density, parking density, crime, and a lot of the things that I'm mentioning, I think, have been mentioned already. And again, because I do not know how much of this you guys are already studying, but it's something to bring to your attention from our point of view on a day-to-day operations that on the people that we see. And again, parking and human density, that's my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Suzanne Render, please.
My name's Suzanne Render. I'm one of the residents that live on Cedar Road. I live at 317 Cedar Road. I've lived there for 23 years now. It's a single-family residence and surrounded by others. 2 of my neighbors wanted to be here tonight, and they were out of town because they have the same concerns that I do. I went last night and took some pictures of the parking situation. I only made 1 copy, I'm sorry. But it shows 25, 30, 40 cars that are parked illegally in the school parking lot. And that happens all the time. So saying that there's enough parking already is not true. During the school hours, it's almost impossible to get anywhere. And so there's really a big problem with the access and egress on Cedar Road already. It's a very narrow street. There aren't adequate sidewalks. Vista Way is a very narrow street. There's a bus stop someplace there, but that's the closest one. So in reference to North Santa Fe, again, they have access to public transportation right across the street, which makes a big difference. we've seen an increase in crime in the area and are starting a neighborhood watch as well as the area's been built up. The density, again, of population seems to encourage that. There are 2 churches nearby. There's the Vista Buddhist Temple and Japanese Cultural Center, and then there's also a church right near where I live. Both of them have had to put up fencing and gates to keep people out from parking there, and security guards and such. So that's my main concern is about parking. I did have one other question that I don't think was talked about. The handicap parking for the apartments, they say that there's 2, but they also say that there's no elevator. So I'm wondering how it could be ADA compliant, and they may want to go into that at the next Planning Commission and find out more about how that's going to work out.
Perfect.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Lou Schlom? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Lou Slocum. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
First thing I wanted to say is probably more of a question. This regards the 2 3-story buildings that are proposed. I've walked that area, and there are no less than 5 apartments on a quarter-mile stretch of Cedar Road. All of them are 2 stories. Is the height limit currently capped at 2 stories? It is. Okay. So this would be one of the concessions. Because once this happens, we run into a conflict with the 2030 General Plan and some of the Lucy policies talking about land use and community identity. Because by going to 3 stories, this building, this complex, will stand out amongst all the others. It will be quite different. And there will also most probably be a loss of views as well, because it will be the only 3-story structures in this area. I also had a question in regard to the application because of the second concession with respect to the increased dwelling units per acre. 54 units on 1.95 acres calculates to 27.7 dwelling units per acre. This area is currently RM21. Am I correct? But in the application, there was a line that reads 27.7 dwelling units per acre equals 40 dwelling units per acre, which is the density for mixed use. Does this property become a mixed-use zoned area with the construction of these apartments?
Would you like me to answer now or wait until the end? No, it does not. They're basically asking for 35%, which is a state density bonus allowance, but that does not change the zone.
What happens in a scenario whereby these structures, for any reason, go away? Does it revert to RM21? I'm talking about something within the space of the 55 years we've talked about.
The RM21 zone is, as it currently exists, it stays. Nothing changes unless the city council rezones that particular property to something else.
Thank you. I'm also concerned about the parking. Again, I've walked the area, and there's also a speed limit, I believe, of 25 miles per hour. I did not witness anyone driving that slowly. And with the Casita School right on the corner of West and Cedar, that's a real cautionary tale in my mind, as well as for any of the residents that are along that street. The last thing I wanted to mention is just the general population density of the area, which is substantial. As I mentioned, there are 5 apartment complexes on Cedar. There would be 6 with this proposal. They extend down both sides of West Road and also on Nettleton. Now, it's an acknowledged fact that the population density of Vista is 5,149 people per square mile. That is more than any other community that surrounds us. It's more than Carlsbad, it's more than Oceanside, it's more than San Marcos, and it is more than Escondido. If we look at the number of units...
Can you wrap it up, sir?
Yes, I can. Thank you. All of these units are on 8.7 acres, 203 units. The average family size in Vista is 3.8 people. That's computes to 88.6 people per acre. If you then equate that in people per mile, it is a density of, in excess, 56,000 people per square mile in this little quarter-mile swath of Vista. So think very carefully, please, about what you're deciding on. Thank you.
Diane Stickle, please.
Hi, I live and work on Cedar Road. I work in the Scripps building right there on the corner. And then there's the Buddhist temple, and I live in Vista Pacifica Apartments, which is right on the other side. So,
can you state your name and give your address?
Diane Stickle, 176 Cedar Road.
Thank you.
And traffic is a nightmare there, and parking. It has been. There's been many accidents. There's a light desperately needed there at the corner of Vista Way and Cedar Road. With the clinic there where I work, we have the ambulances coming in all the time, and they always have a hard time getting in and out with traffic. And it's a blind driveway that you pull out of in a couple of the apartments and the one where I live too. And people, as you said, they do not go 25 miles an hour. They fly down the road. We've been hit once pulling out. Cars just come flying. They have complete disregard for the speed limit. And at night, the school parking lot is parked completely full. They're parked, double parked. They're parked in the fire zones. There's a couple areas on Cedar Road that jet out, so it's a really narrow in and out to get through that way. And to have another apartment complex is just totally ridiculous and not needed. I don't walk my dog further past my apartment because there is a lot of crime and people hanging out that don't belong there. They go in and out of the empty place that's being proposed, the land, but maybe it could be a better use, but not another complex. And my apartment that I live in faces right to the empty. It butts right up to it. There's a couple coyotes living there too, wondering what will happen to the coyotes. Don't want them to come get my dog. And I live with someone who's extremely ill, and there's some people in the buildings that use oxygen too. So I'm wondering, with construction going on, what would happen. We don't have cross ventilation or anything, and construction, I know, is not just an hour here, an hour there. How long would that be? What would be, with all the dust being kicked up, and for health concerns as well. And the parking, I think she said 1.5 is, how many parking spaces for a family, but there's people where I live, it's a 36-unit building, a complex, and there's some people, they have a work truck and 2 vehicles, and they're always scrambling looking for places. So the parking, you have visitors, there's holidays, where are all these people going to go? And my concern, I don't have any children in the school, but I go there and drive by, and they are backed up. And there's open house, there's orientation, there's school plays, where the parents they shouldn't have to be parking 3 blocks away. That's not safe for them either, with the kids. So I'm really totally against this and think it should really be looked at for the kids' safety, for the people who live there safety. And the Smart and Final, they put in 3 parking spots in one just because people go, and we don't even have that. And the traffic, it needs a light. It's not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lisa? Lisa, whose last name begins with a D.
My name is Lisa Deju, D-E-J-U, and I live at 2011 Date Street in Vista. And I am also the president of the PTA at Casita Center. I don't have as well prepared comments, but I do have a couple. Date Street is on the northmost part of Vista. The houses behind me are Oceanside. My portion of Date Street is only accessible by Cedar Road. I cannot access any other portion of Date Street. They made it when they allowed the builder to build. They made a cul-de-sac so that my portion of Date Street does not connect to any other portion of Date Street. So I am only accessible via Cedar Road. I am lucky that my children go to school within half a mile, and we are able to walk, but we often do not because things get busy when you have little children. And my son is now attending what used to be Washington Middle School. I would like to point out, I don't know that the people that are developing this realize that Casita Center is a magnet school. It is not a neighborhood school. You are only get into Casita Center via lottery draw in kindergarten. This year we have 98 spaces for kindergarten, and we have 98 students on the waiting list after our 98 that got in. And every single grade has a waiting list. There are 2 other schools immediately in this area. There is Tri-City Christian, which all of their traffic, when they drop off in the morning, they enter through Emerald, and then they exit directly straight through Tri-City and exit onto Cedar Road. And then all of those parents drive by Casita Center. This is horrendous. This makes our traffic horrible in the morning. We have done the best that we can do with our student crossing guards, our paid crossing guard. We now have our community liaison also across the street every morning. There are people that drive, as was mentioned, into oncoming traffic to go around cars that are stopped to try to get into Casita Center. And oftentimes, parents that drop off at other schools, for now that they don't have a child in the car, now they just want to get to work. There is also Belamente School right on Emerald, directly across from West. So there are 3 schools in the area. I mentioned that my son is going to the school that used to be Washington because we had a student years ago that came from Casita Center and was going to, at the time, Washington, which on Olive there are very few sidewalks similar to Cedar Road, where there's patches of sidewalk, no sidewalk, sidewalk, no sidewalk. And one of our students was hit and killed by a driver on Olive. We have a memorial in our school because a young student was killed. I would hate to have this happen again. The traffic impact on Cedar Road from this type of development will be horrendous. You need to do a complete traffic study, including studying the potential for a traffic light at Cedar and Vista Way. I feel that this is a misuse of the space and that it should be reconsidered.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deju. Val Brown, please.
Good evening. I hope you're all having a pleasant summer.
Good to see you.
Thank you. This is a tough one. You know, affordable housing is something that we need.
Name and address, Val.
Oh, I'm sorry, Val Brown, 562 Joe Hill Drive. And I know that there's a sincere intent here. I went over and took a look at this neighborhood, and there is no parking. Casita is definitely being the de facto parking lot. So some questions, some things that occurred to me. There's an RCS policy in the general plan, as you can see. It's my favorite book these days. Park Space, does this meet the park space requirements? Commissioner Carroll, I believe, or was it Commissioner Looney? I apologize. In-unit laundry, I know that was a big concern when we had the apartment standards meeting back in May 2014, I believe. Both Mayor Ritter and Deputy Mayor Rigby were disappointed that I believe it was the North Santa Fe where there was the affordable housing allotted, that there was no in-house. As far as the 55-year, just recently in Carlsbad, I met face-to-face with a woman who lost her affordable housing. The 55 years expired, and there was nothing the city could do about it. So you were looking, are there instances? And it was heartbreaking. She didn't really know what she was going to do or where she was going to go. Traffic, does this affect public safety services? Do we need more public safety services in this area? I don't have the exact page in front of me, but if I could read to you, I couldn't find this, maybe Patsy, you could help me, but flexibility in development standards. It says ideal density for affordable housing in Vista is between 15 and 20 units per acre as garden-style apartments. This density level and development prototype can be accommodated within the city's two-story building height limit. So that was cited as page 56 of 163. So that's just another question about that. And also just the landscape is going to be really important. 3 stories. We have 4 stories in our neighborhood, and that landscape is never, ever going to be in scale with those buildings, ever. It's not. And finally, I would like to thank all of you, and especially Commissioner Carroll, for your comment about 55 years from now, because what we're living with today happened back in 1962, and the parking issues, the crime, the trash. So I believe it was Commissioner Rossler, you wanted conditions, and can we, attach that? I just wonder if that's not something that's possible for all apartment units that are being built right now. So thank you kindly. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Francisco Arango.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak today. Couple of things.
State your name and give your address.
My name is Francisco Arango. My address is 633 Ascot Drive.
Thank you.
As an educator, the safety and the education of the children does matter to me. And a couple of things I wanted to point out is I like the idea that they want to build affordable housing. It's needed. The only issue I have is that there is no space for children to develop. There is no open spaces where they can play, they can, hang out, which means that they're going to have to walk to a park elsewhere. And the way the streets are at, I used to actually live there before in that neighborhood, and it was constantly packed with cars. You could not walk around there without, somebody almost hitting you every now and then. So I can just imagine children having to, trying to, play ball at a near park and, could get into an accident because of the reckless driving that occurs around there. Now, as far as parking goes into that complex, a lot of the times that, at least when I was living there, I would notice that a lot of residents would have 2, sometimes 3 cars. And if this complex has 56 units, I'm thinking there's going to be about 100 cars that are going to be needing parking. And if we don't have enough parking in the complex, that means they're just going to go saturate the streets even more. So it's going to just create a little bit more safety issues. But that's just something I wanted to point out. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't have any more speaker slips from the public. I do appreciate all your comments. Commissioners, this is the time for your comments regarding, well, let's start out with, are there any comments on the site design and or grading? Commissioner Carroll, did you have some, or is this leftover?
No, I'd like to speak.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. So I thought it was worth just kind of reiterating this affordable housing situation just for the public and kind of the box that it puts us into, just to help frame what the Planning Commission is able to do and not able to do. And that is that because it's an affordable housing project by state law, it gets these density bonuses and these concessions, and that's that. So, and as Mr. Stone was giving us some clarification on that, the minimal ways to deny a project, for the city to deny a project on those concessions is the basis of health and safety, essentially. So that's the framework that we have, and I don't think you would find I think you're going to find a lot of consensus from the commission regarding your concerns about traffic and the 3 stories. So what the early design review process lets us do at this point, pre-submittal, is talk about how the building looks, the amenities that are provided, and that kind of thing. So going forward, I didn't want the public to feel like we don't share some of those same concerns. So the first topic is
Site design and grading.
Okay, so site design and grading, there was a question brought up about the wetlands area, the wetland setback. I'd be curious to know if that would be fenced off from access, or if it's dedicated open space, what that would ultimately end up looking like. I can see it's a building setback, but I don't know what other kind of restrictions might be put on that area for access or for use. I know the architect had spoke about trying to stay away from these massing structures, but with 2 3-story buildings, you have 2 massive structures here, and so I'm really concerned about this 3-story difference in how it looks in the neighborhood, and I'd be interested in looking at the possibility of a step down to 2 stories as it reaches the street to match the height of the community building as a way to minimize that massive presence on the street. And as far as that topic, that's all I have.
Perfect. Commissioner Looney, please. Site design and grading.
Okay. On the layout of the driveway and of the structures, the design guidelines adopted by the city really are asking for an offset to where there's not a long linear element on the site plan. We've got a driveway that's probably over 500 feet straight. You've got 2 buildings. They're all in the same wall plane. So we really are looking at something that's about 45 feet wide and 520, 530 feet long. 3 stories on the south side. Again, the design guidelines ask for something in the drive and in the parking that provide more interest and irregularity on the layout. One of the things that would help on the next application, if on the building footprint on the site plan, if you could indicate the building type. As I go through the floor plans, as I go through the exterior elevations, you have building type 1, building type 2, and to have that on that site plan on sheet AS1 would really be helpful to create some context as to the subsequent drawings. That would be helpful. On grading, we've got a 10-foot retaining wall right next to the bioretention basin. I know it's a little bit more costly, but if we could get away from a perfectly almost level building pad to where we create, 3 or 4 foot difference between building 1 and building 2, where that 10-foot wall is maybe only 5 feet tall instead of 10. I think it's a little more conducive to the existing topography of the property. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosler, please.
I had some additional thoughts on the affordable housing issue for the public, but most of them have gone. At one point, they should understand that the property is designated on the general plan as high density, 21 dwelling units per acre. Our plan for the city calls for this to be apartments, 40 units of apartments. That's what we plan for. I guess kind of the bad news is they're asking for an affordable housing density bonus, and they're proposing 54. The good news is they're proposing an affordable housing project. Because of that, we can regulate who lives here, how many cars they have, how many people live in the unit. It's much more regulated than a normal market rate apartment. So there's some trade-offs that we get. That they can reduce the number of parking spaces because the people that are going to be living there, they can manage to not have more cars. If they do, they're invited to leave and they're kicked out. And they do a good job on it on the North Santa Fe and the Paseo Santa Fe project. So these folks have got a good track record in the city. They have managed their projects well from what we've asked staff. And so we're anticipating, because of their track record, that they'll probably have the same level of management and impact to the neighborhood, which should be less than a market rate project, I think. So just other comments on the affordable housing. Sorry.
Okay. Next will be architecture. Any comments, commissioners, on the architecture? Commissioner Jackal, please.
Okay. With respect, I'm sorry, I don't see any craftsman design elements. It's simply rows of windows. There are no exterior architectural features or details. The elevations number 2 and 4 for both the apartments and the community building are just blank walls. I agree 3 stories seems too tall and looming, and I like the suggestion of maybe stepping down to 2 stories. If we have to have 3, stepping down to 2 stories closer to the street. And I had written down that the driveway is just this long desert. It's terrible. Enough.
Commissioner Rosler.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the parapet wall for the solar. This is basically a flat roof, or at least the elevation appears to be flat. There are other projects on North Santa Fe and Paseo Santa Fe. There's changes in the elevation of the roof. And they're talking about, exceeding the height limit of 35 feet by 6 inches. I'd give them 2 or 3 more feet to at least break up that straight line of the roof elevation. So,
Commissioner Looney, please.
3 points just to take into consideration. Again, we need to get some articulation on the exterior elevations. The application said craftsman style. As far as I can see, about the only element that relates to a craftsman style is a standing seam metal roof. And that's stretching a little bit. I think there needs to be more work and articulation with the massing and the scale of the buildings. if we go back to the grading issue, if you drop the grades towards the west portion of the property 2, 3, 4 feet, and if you take the premise that you go to a 2-story structure on the east side, then that's going to offset the height of the 3-story structure on the west side of the building, on the west side of the property. Also, if we put solar panels on that 3-story structure, they're not going to be seen, thereby allowing you to vary the heights of the parapet walls to get, I think, some greater articulation in that. And that was all. Thank you.
Next is parking and traffic. Commissioner Carroll?
Well, as mentioned, as one of the concessions for parking, there's not much we can do about it, but I am concerned that it's not enough parking. Just by some rough calculations, if I subtract out the visitors and employees, and then allow 1 car per unit, the remaining amount of parking left is about 30% or a third of those units being allowed to have a second car. So I'd be interested in seeing, in association with the management plan, how you plan on divvying up those spaces and controlling that. There's going to be some handicaps, some visitors, some staff, and then about a third or less of those 54 units can have a second car, 2/3 cannot. And that, I don't think that's realistic. And I don't know what the number is, but it's not near the Sprinter, and it's very concerning, and it's very frustrating that these state requirements are putting us in, I think, a detrimental situation, and it makes me want to have our general plan re-engineered, backed out from these forced bonuses, so that when the bonuses then do come through, that we're at the levels that were originally intended. That's a pie in the sky type scenario, but and the traffic, we heard from the neighborhood that traffic is really bad there because of the schools. Not much we can do about that as far as the school traffic's going to be what it is, but we're just adding to that.
Thank you. Commissioner Garrettson, please.
Will a traffic study be required, especially as it relates to the potential light at Vista Way and Cedar?
It is too early to tell, and we would have to identify the need for that when they formally submit.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jackal?
Thank you. I've already said I'm desperately concerned about the traffic. I don't know if there's any way to dial back the number of apartments so we have less. We have parking spaces for more people. I don't know. I had the traffic study on my list to speak about. I drove down that street early afternoon. It's a very narrow street, and even at that hour, there was scarcely an empty parking space on the street. I just think we're being forced to force a nightmare on this neighborhood.
Commissioner Rossler?
I would be interested in seeing a traffic study on the project. I would be interested in if the warrants are being met for a traffic signal at Vista Way, and what the possibility of traffic calming on Cedar Drive would be.
My comments on the parking and the traffic mirror Commissioner Jackal's comments. It's already a bad situation. It's just going to make it worse. Ms. Chow, I have a question. Is the apartment complex on the east side of Cedar at West, it's right there at the corner, right across from Casita School, is that affordable housing?
I do not know. I'd have to look into that.
Because my question is, I thought that was, from the days when I ran for city council, an affordable housing unit, and I wondered, did we not require back in those days a parking management plan and the constraints that we're putting on the...
I venture to say probably not at the time. I think it's something that's become more common because of the topic of parking and the concerns associated with it, so it has been brought up more in the recent projects that we have had as far as the parking management plan. So,
yeah, don't like the parking, the traffic. It's terrible. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, landscape and amenities. Any comments? Commissioner Carroll?
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding amenities, typically with this many units, the Planning Commission, or myself, and I guess I'll just speak for myself, would like to see three distinct and noteworthy amenities for this number of units. We had, I don't know how far this ended up going with council, but we had essentially proposed this tiered system for the more units, the more amenities. And so we have the community room with kind of an undefined use so far, but that's good. And then we have this plaza. But the plaza and the courtyard at this point are just, as Commissioner Garrettson mentions, just passive greenbelt type areas. And myself, I would be looking for more actual noteworthy amenities, whether it's half-court basketball hoop or barbecue gathering area, stuff like that. I guess you've got the tot lot too. I didn't mean to discount that, but I think you're still missing one noteworthy amenity, in my opinion.
Commissioner Rossler.
I agree with Commissioner Carroll. We've got 14 three-bedroom units here. I believe we're going to have kids living here, and we need to have an active recreation area for them, whether it's the half-court basketball or a lawn area where they can throw a ball or kick a ball around. I like the tot lot. I think that's necessary, and the community room and the passive areas. But I think with the 3 bedrooms, we need to plan for the kids that are going to be here. So that's good.
Commissioner Jackal?
I would just say I totally agree and was going to say the same thing.
Perfect. Commissioner Looney?
The issues have already been voiced.
Commissioner Garrettson?
Same. Ditto.
Commissioner Carroll?
Thank you. I did have a little bit of a question regarding the laundry area, and maybe the applicant could now or in the future describe how you come up with the amount of laundry area for the amount of units. It seems a little light to me.
Actually, tax credit allocation has about, 100 pages of regulations, and they do specify how many washers and dryers in a common laundry area, which is typical for this. And so that's how we come up with it, and don't think we've ever had an issue in any development with that.
Okay, thanks.
Miss Mary Jane, before you leave, question on the affordable housing. So if someone wants to rent a 3-bedroom, can it be 2 couples and a child?
No. Well, typically not. And you have to understand, I'm not on the compliance end, but it is not typically 2 families. So they have to be some sort of unit, and it is, again, it's regulated how many people per apartment. So.
Can't have 9 people in a 3-bedroom.
Cannot have 9 people in a 3-bedroom.
But we could have mother, father, driving age children, and a toddler.
You could.
Okay.
Yes, you could have a family unit such as that. Yes.
Okay. All right. That lessens the blow a little bit. Let's see. Neighborhood compatibility and any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Bell.
I'll just say I echo the comments from the other commissioners at this point. I think you've heard the concerns, and I'll reiterate what I said earlier. I'm new at this, so I'm still grasping what we can do and what we can't do, and there's been some good explanations of that tonight. But the concern of going for 54 units right out of the gate, I understand the financial consideration, and a business is a business, but is it necessary and is it best for your mission and the community? And so any data you have to actually back that up would be helpful. I'm not asking to challenge you, but as you guys come back to us, the more you can show us from your other projects and other issues you guys have worked on, both with parking, with design, things like that a complex this size does have the benefits and the size is necessary due to cost, due to whatever issues you guys face. Thanks.
Commissioner Bell, I appreciate your comments, and I agree 40 units would be tough to swallow in this area, and 54 just makes it that much more difficult. Commissioner Looney?
Just on a side note, I know we've got affordable housing. I know there's regulations. The city has in place management principles to adhere by. A family member has firsthand experience in affordable housing, and I'm not saying that everybody lives one way or the other, but there is a lot of ways to tweak the system. Yes, we can have a father and a mother and a daughter and a son, who those daughters and sons can also have spouses and can have children. And so there's ways to tweak the system. And there's also the same ways to tweak the system when it comes to automobiles. We can't design for that. The applicant can't submit for that. But that's the reality of affordable housing. And again, it's one of those things, how do we deal with those issues that are realistic issues, but they're not written? And that's what we have before us. It's a monster that we got to deal with. So that was all I wanted to add.
Commissioner Rossler?
Mary Jane, I think you've heard our concerns tonight. I think a lot of the concerns about the impacts to the neighborhood can be addressed in the management plan. So in your written description of the project, when you submit your application, I'd be interested in a detailed discussion about your management plan, about how you go about that, how you go about selecting the people who are going to live here and what their requirements are. If they don't turn out to be good citizens, how you get rid of them. And then how you're going to, an extension of that, how you're going to manage the parking. I'd also like to see a discussion of what the affordable rents are going to be. I mean, that's an incredibly important issue in our city right now. People not spending more than 50% of their incomes on rent, and then at the end of the month, other things start slipping, like food or medicine or utilities. So I think that's important to include in your discussion. For the rest of the commissioners, if you've been reading the paper and seeing what's going on in Sacramento, If the governor has his way, we won't be doing this. They'll go to the building department and get a building permit to build this project. So it's a real sensitive, and it's an important issue. We need affordable rents in the city, but we also need to listen to the neighborhood and our general plan and our zoning ordinance. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Okay, Ms. Chow and Ms. Mary Jane, did you get everything you needed from us? Okay. All right, so that early design review is now laid to rest. Next is commission staff discussion, council action, and reports.
We will be having a meeting on August 16th. I know we were dormant for a couple of months, but maybe we'll be picking up full speed, so be ready.
Any hints of what we will be seeing on design reviews? Or
Yeah, there will be another early design review on the 16th for a condominium project on East Vista Way. So that'll be coming before you. Michael Ressler, our principal planner, will be presenting that.
Okie dokie. Let's see. Comments from the Community Development Director, City Planner, and Assistant. I think we just got that one as well, right?
Yes, and then I just remembered one item. There will be a general plan amendment discussion at City Council on August the 9th for a property at 1205 Melrose Way. So if you're interested in learning more about what that is, they're proposing to have a rezone and general plan amendment to allow for, now I don't remember whether it was an apartment or a condominium project, but it's something that's on the scheduled agenda. So,
any new leases in the city?
Not particularly aware. I'm sure there are, but not aware myself.
Okay. Comments from City Attorney, Mr. Stone? Nothing? Reports, comments from the commission members? Commissioner Rossler?
Ms. Chow, I will be out of town on August 16th, so I will not be here. So just to let you know.
Commissioner Jackal?
Actually, the governor's affordable housing bill was something I wanted to ask a question about. Do we know where it is? What's coming up? Has everybody written letters?
Yeah, it did create a lot of activity as far as trying to get the message across, but I have not heard as far as it going anywhere at this point. And to my knowledge, it's still out there. And whether it's going to become reality or not, I guess that's a question remaining to be seen.
The Chamber of Commerce has the Government Affairs meeting on Thursday, so I'm sure that'll be a topic that will be discussed this Thursday at noon.
Thank you. Commissioner Carroll?
Ms. Chow, do you have any updates for that townhouse condo project on Lotto de Loma Drive?
Pheasant Hills, I believe. They are actually in the process of putting together their submittal. They're going to try to actually submit it this week, by the end of this week. So we should be seeing that coming in.
Did they listen to us?
We shall see.
Commissioner Looney?
Patsy, a couple things. As we hear things from Sacramento, the seminar that Gary and I went to in March, there was a lot of issues that dealt specifically with the United Nations Agenda 21 that America has signed up for, along with another 150 other countries. There really isn't a way to go against that policy, is there?
That's a tough question.
For example, the roads.
Mm-hmm.
We have traffic issues, but now we've dedicated 50% of our lanes to bicycles. Some of the streets in, I think it was in Oakland or Castro Valley, they're able to make the parking spaces now 7 feet wide, and the main line of traffic, main lane of traffic, is reduced to 9 or 10 feet to slow cars down. And the whole objective is to get rid of the cars. And so if you haven't done any studying on Agenda 21, it's very interesting reading. So it's a little frustrating to be here because we really can't do anything about it because of what our federal government has done. Mm-hmm. Our hands are really tied to what we can do with city planning and city development. So I'll leave that aside. The other one, Cineopolis. 2 more restaurants are going out. And I've talked at length with John Conley about this. Does the city have any power or any means by which to deal with the owner? Or are they just call the rents what they want and let that become a ghost town?
That's unfortunate, but I don't believe if it's, we're talking about the landlord being DDR, they really control, who they want in there and the rent's going up or not. And we don't have, as the city, it's not, although we like to work with them in areas that we can and we have the ability to, but it's unfortunate. It's just how things are happening these days, and it's just kind of unfortunate to hear that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Garrettson, please.
Yeah, I hit that button earlier about the government affairs because we have all of our state legislators are either there or have a representative, so they'll give us an update.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
And here.